I'm your daddy.
I can be smart when it's important.
I'm your daddy. I'm sorry to this. I'm your daddy.
Welcome to Daddy Dailies, a podcast hosted by Not Your Daddy's Films. On a film set, dailies are sent out after a shoot day so you can see the work in progress. Daddy Dailies are conversations that go behind the scenes so you can see what work went into the process and be better armed to succeed in the industry. Daddy Dailies, hosted by Not Your Daddy's Films.
Okay, let's jump in.
Welcome back to Daddy Dailies. I'm Catherine.
And I'm Vika.
And we are two of the founders of Not Your Daddy's Films. Not Your Daddy's Films is a social impact organization dedicated to empowering and educating women and non-binary creatives in TV and film. We're not your old daddies. We're new and improved. I'm a daddy. You're a daddy. We're all daddies here. So why Daddy Dailies? On a film set, dailies are sent over after a shoot day so you can see the work in progress.
Veronica Bouza is a director of photography originally from Los Angeles, California, whose work spans narrative, commercial, and documentary film. We first saw her work through a director, Rayanne Harris, who screened a short film that they made together, Pens and Pencils, at our Halloween screening. We were totally obsessed with it and had to find out who our guest today was. Veronica moved up through the ranks through crewing as an IATSE 476 electrician and an IATSE 600 camera assistant to receive her MFA from the American Film Institute. Veronica's AFI thesis, We Were Meant To, premiered at Sundance 2023. Veronica's narrative work has been an official selection at Sundance, Tribeca, BAFTA, South by Southwest, and Slam Dance Film Festival. No big deal. Most recently, Veronica finished principal photography on an independent feature called Grassland, starring Mia Maestro from Motorcycle Diaries and Quincy Isaiah from Winning Time. Her debut feature, The Gutter, premiered at South by Southwest 2024, starring Shmeek Moore from Spider-Verse and Susan Sarandon. Veronica was named American Cinematographer's 2022 Rising Star of Cinematography. Veronica, thank you so much for being on Daddy Dailies today.
Yo, how about that bio? Excuse me.
Oh, thank you. No, it's such a pleasure to be here. And it's funny reading my bio out loud.
I bet.
It's something I've had to write over the years, and it's just funny.
It's amazing.
It's so impressive. I hope you feel so good about yourself. It's like that video of the little girl saying affirmations to herself in the mirror. And sometimes we need the reminder.
When you're in a bio, you're forcing yourself to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
So let's get into it. Like, being an actor or writer is such a front-facing job in the industry. And I feel like as a young adult, it's easy to see those and be like, I want to do that. Like, how did you fall in love with something that's not really glamorized in the same way? And where did cinematography come into your life?
So my parents are both architects. And
Cool.
they are amazing drawers. And even my sister is an architect. And we travel a lot. We look at buildings, we look at lighting, but I never was a great drawer. So I really got close to photography. And I think the nice thing with cinematography, it's a great connection of taking photos, but creating stories. So I decided to go to Chicago, go live somewhere new, go to film school. And I think through that process and then the process of working in the industry, that's kind of how I fell in love with cinematography.
Was there a time you were like, I want to direct or I want to, do behind the scenes photography or something instead? Or was it always kind of guiding you on that path to having the camera in hand?
I mean, I think there's definitely been moments where I've wanted to direct, but I really love, I get a story or I get a script and I turn it into reality. Which is such a crazy thing. And I feel like I get to do more stories rather than telling my story over and over. I get to collaborate with people who have these crazy ideas or ideas I don't even know how we're going to achieve and try to problem solve it. And I think it's a really cool niche job that has a such technical aspect to it, but also can be really creative.
Yeah.
And did your parents, when you were young and when you're like, I want to be a cinematographer, did they know what that meant? Did they know how to help you? Or was it kind of like you had to figure that shit out?
Not really. I think even now, we're still learning what it means to be a cinematographer.
For sure.
I think it definitely helped later on in my career when I actually started shooting. But like early on when I was like working on sets as an electrician or like gripping, they're like, what are you doing? And I feel like the levels of explaining, they've been simpler now.
Totally.
Yeah.
The earlier, like the PA days, the gripping days, they're just like, yeah, so I carry these things, I'm like shaping lighting, but I'm not a real electrician. Like I really can't do.
Oh yeah, because they're like, can you fix this for us now?
Absolutely not. Like my skills are very limited to like film sets. So it's been a really beautiful kind of experience, like showing them the process of what it takes and all the little steps to get to where I am today.
I feel like they probably understand as architects because there are so many people who have to bring that to life. Just like it's also a very multi-layered collaborative.
I mean, I
field.
think what I love about them is that they really wanted me to do something creative, and they're so inspired by their careers. You know, like their career is a big part of their life, and it's not just a job, it's part of them. So it's like, how do you find that for yourself? So with me finding it, they've just been super supportive, and especially when I wanted to go back to grad school.
For people who have maybe only worked on short films with limited crews, can you kind of explain the difference between a cinematographer and a camera operator and sort of how you guys work with a director?
Sure. So a camera operator is someone who's operating the camera. And you'll find as you get in bigger productions, there's a camera operator that's underneath the director of photography. So a cinematographer or director of photography kind of help build the visuals with the director, with the production designer, with the costume designer. It's all the department heads. We all kind of work together. And for my line of work, we kind of figure out all the camera angles, all the lighting, and then we delegate it to the camera operator. Sometimes I don't have a camera operator and I'm my own camera operator. So it really depends on the type of project that we're doing, because sometimes we have like 2 cameras, 3 cameras, 4 cameras. And when you're doing multiple cameras, it's hard for you to physically operate. So it's really nice to bring in another operator who has like a different sense of the story, and they're there as solely a technician. Because when you're shooting, a lot of times you got to split your brain and micromanage. And it's really nice to have someone there who can just really focus on the
I think the directors I have observed, and myself as a director, I have an understanding of camera to a certain degree, but not the same as a director of photography or camera operator does. And I'm curious how you work with different directors who might be like, I want it to look this certain way, but not have the same language as you, and how you communicate that to the electricians and the gaffers and the operators who work under you.
It's funny because I work with a lot of directors, some that are like super technical, like you said, and then some that have little to no technical knowledge. And I think the big thing in pre-production is figuring out story and more emotions and creatively, what do you want to feel with every frame? And then from there, we kind of build the visual design together. And then from that, I'll take it to my team, kind of with our visual references, and build a game plan.
With visual references, like that obviously is so vital. In what form do you like taking visual references from directors? What do you use?
Well, it depends on if I have the job or if I'm interviewing for the job. When I'm interviewing, typically I'm sent like a lookbook, or sometimes I'm not. I'm just given the script. It's really nice to be sent a lookbook because then I already know where the director's head is and what they're thinking visually. So then when I go into the meeting, I'll pull my own set of references that are in that same field, but I might add a couple new ideas. Or I'll have a blank guess at, I read the script, this is what connected to me.
Right.
But I think the trick is more meeting with the director and just seeing their personality before you show your visual reference, because you don't have the job yet. So you're reading them, you're reading their taste, and then from there you can kind of build a lookbook. And building a lookbook is a compromise, like a Bible of, it could be visual references, it could be like photography references, it could be painting, but it really depends on how you want to go about making the film. Because I've worked with some directors who are like, I hate looking at references. Cool.
Which is wild.
And then I worked with some directors who like to match references verbatim. So you kind of have to find that fine line of, it's usually you're setting a tone. So it might not be the correct reference, but it's getting you that conversation.
Yeah, like about lighting or, framing and like how you want to feel.
Yeah.
So you were part of the AFI program. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works and how it maybe did or didn't, I'm assuming did because of the bio, but launch your career?
Yeah, no, so before AFI, I was a union technician, and I was working I was working the industry for quite a while, but I kind of hit that point where I didn't feel really creative and I wanted to move up as a DP. And, everyone always says to you, go shoot. And you're like, okay, cool. Thank you for the advice.
Yeah.
So a mentor of mine, Amy Vincent, she really pushed me on just apply to AFI. And the cool thing with AFI, it's a 2-year program, and that's all you're doing. And the nice thing about film school, it sucks paying money, but you get to learn in darkness in a way. Like, you're going to work on projects that don't matter, because when you shoot projects, they should matter. So when I was on Jane the Virgin, I decided to apply. I literally applied on set, on my camera cart.
Wow.
It was a surreal experience trying to build my reel and my resume and write an essay again, because you're out of school for I was out of school for a while. So it felt weird to
go back to
come
that.
back.
I'm doing that right now too.
Yeah. To come back to school and getting accepted. It was a really humbling experience, because I think you go into AFI, you're like, oh, I'm okay. I'm kind of cool. And then you spend your first year getting kind of a slap in the face and a reminder that you don't know anything. And
I think everyone needs that, though. In every field, you have to get punched in the face, and then you have to get up and be like, all right, what do I need to know? And it's everything.
Yes. No, it was a great reminder that even though I had all these years of being a technician, I knew shit. And it really humbled me to get back to the indie world and work on really small sets and figure out, how do I build my look every time and never make an excuse? Could I do it with a Black Magic? Could I do it with, a Venice?
Right.
From all ranges of cameras and lighting, how can I tell stories? So the program for me, it was really impactful, and I took it as a personal journey. And I found my classmates who were like myself, who were a little on the older side, they definitely got a lot more out of AFI.
You mentioned a Venice, and that made me wonder, that's a newer camera body, right?
Yeah, it's a Sony camera.
Yeah, you constantly have to keep up with these new products that people are using in film.
Yeah, no, before I do a project, or if I know I'm about to do a project, I will do a test on a camera, and I'll test the latitude. And that's something I learned at AFI, because when we were shooting our student films, they never told us the base settings for the camera.
Oh,
Yeah. You had to test the camera and decide for yourself what is the optimal ISO to shoot the camera at.
So they did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Sneaky.
But with that knowledge, you can really push the limits of the camera.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you know what? I actually really like it when it's rated a little higher and it has a little digital noise, because I know when I go into post, I'm going to make it a little more film grain or something.
And it's about your personal preference too, almost. Like they're allowing you to find what you love about the camera.
Yeah, it was pretty much like, okay, let's just strip away like these are like the base settings, or you're just going to shoot it wide open. Like, could you make a film with just any old camera? Can you tell a story? Can you evoke emotions and kind of just like cut the bullshit?
Yeah.
And I think that practice really kind of pushed myself to be better, do better. And when I'm not working, to really test and learn. And, you know, I think it's really important to work with companies and build with companies. So you're always kind of up to date with like, especially like lighting. Like there's, especially in this LED world, like there's a new light every minute.
Yeah.
And half the time I'm on set, I'm like, the thing that looks like the light I called for. I don't know that's what I called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's crazy because it's an ever evolving industry.
Yeah.
It kind of makes it fun too. Like new toys, basically.
And you'll find like the more DPs that you know, some are just like way more tech heavy.
Yeah.
And then others are so artsy where you're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Where do you fall, do you think?
I think I fall in the middle.
Okay.
I think I do focus a lot on the story and kind of figuring out the aesthetics. And then for certain projects, I get into the weeds of the technical, because I think the technical has to be at a base level so you don't question it.
Oh, that's smart. That's very well said, I think.
I think that kind of leads to this next question. Like, what do you wish directors knew about working with DPs? Like, what maybe not to do, what to do? Like, is there anything you would say that's like, when you're working with a DP, this is how you should be?
I mean, I think it's just being really open and knowing if you don't like something, because as a DP, sometimes you're kind of like a therapist. You're just hanging out with people and you're like,
I think my DP on my last project would agree.
You know, like you're hanging out, you're getting some feelings. You're like, I think you don't like this. And it's really important as a director to know what you like and what you don't like.
Right.
And how to communicate that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that actually goes for every department head. You have to be able to communicate to delegate. So
you mentioned earlier that you're constantly communicating with the different department heads. Mm-hmm. What does that look like from your department, like with costumes or makeup?
Yeah, no, I mean, before we have like our big production meeting, I love to reach out to the costume designer or like the makeup artist, especially if it's like a really specific look we're going for. And I feel like the group of us have to be on the same page about color.
Really?
When it comes to costumes, and we're working with our production designer and DP, like we all kind of have to be in sync. So it feels seamless, because it could be crazy if she's wearing a red outfit and red makeup and she's in a red room.
Yeah. So we think about like, color theory on La La Land to be like, you know, the most, or I watched like Rye Lane the other night.
Yeah, always so color.
Yeah, and it was so inventive too. So like so much fresh camera movement and like but the colors were just like really vivid, and it was a collaboration between hair, costume, and the cinematography.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times like we'll talk about like the look that we're going for, and okay, we're going with images that are really popping. Yeah. And they take that information and they're like, oh, what if we tried this outfit or that outfit? So I always like to be in the conversations with other departments. A lot of times I'm not actually talking, I'm more like listening.
I think that's really helpful for directors who haven't yet worked on like a TV set as a director, or, you know, a feature film set, to know.
Department heads.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you don't have department heads, you don't know like what is really useful to them. Because, you know, I'd love to have experience in every department, but I don't. So it's really nice to know these things. And I think Oh, of course. Of course. More information is just better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You mentioned the feature film, and we talked about The Gutter that was just at South by Southwest this year, 2024.
Mhm.
Can you talk about what it's like bringing a film to South by? And that's not your first time, but first feature, correct?
Well, it was the first time at South by.
Oh, but didn't your other one get in?
So I had a short and a feature there. And
This year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was both this year.
So I learned about the short getting in pretty recent in the timeline. And then later on, we found out about the feature. And the feature it's called The Gutter. And it's a bowling comedy. It's what the people need.
It's what the people want.
Do you own your own bowling shoes and bowling ball?
I don't, but I do have a couple balls from the film
That's awesome.
as raft gifts. And just through pre-pro, like I did do a lot of bowling, or I'd force my friends to bowl so I could watch them bowl so we could find new angles.
Totally.
Smart.
Because a lot of times, if you watch bowling, like they walk up to the line, they throw the ball, and then they turn around. So
A lot of Big Lebowski in your lookbooks. A lot of
no, it was really fun. So on The Gutter, even though it's an absurd comedy, our visual design is more in the line of PTA. Like it's really
interesting.
dark and it's really grounded. And I think that was a really nice way to ground the film, just because there really isn't a straight character. Like everyone is just really absurd. And the premise of the film, just to kind of give you better context, Walt, who is this hood black dude, he's down out of his luck and he starts working at this bowling alley. And the bowling alley is going under, and they find out he's really good at bowling. And he like chucks the ball, like he does the wind ups. It's very unconventional.
Yeah.
And he ends up going on tour and he turns bowling black. And it's hilarious.
I'm so excited to see this.
Really? Did you guys? You go ahead. I have questions.
Oh, no. And then Susan Sarandon's character is this bowler from the 90s, and she's not having it that this black bowler is coming in and dethroning her.
Oh no!
So she comes out of retirement.
Not Susan.
Not
Susan.
Susan.
That's amazing.
Enemy of the people.
I was gonna ask, did you make any crazy rigs for like the bowling shots?
So our main rig for shooting bowling was we would put steel deck. So steel deck is like how you make stages, like for a concert. And steel deck, there's a hole underneath. So I would put the steel deck on the lanes, so then they could bowl underneath the steel deck.
So you could be above
So
that.
I would be above, and I would put my dolly above, and I would build like a roadway.
Sounds cool.
Right. So one camera would be on the roadway with track doing like a push on as someone's bowling or like a pull out. And then the other camera would be on steady cam and doing like some sort of wrapping. Because we wanted to make bowling feel dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've seen bowling in like The Big Lebowski or Kingpin.
Or Alley Cat Strike.
Yes.
Disney Channel original movie.
Yeah, limp. Oh.
But I feel like we wanted to like make it something different that we haven't seen.
Yes.
We were like, all right, let's challenge ourselves. And you forget there's 10 frames. So you're like, how do I make each frame kind of interesting?
Cool.
And what was what was your color palette for that? I can't wait to see it. But like, what were the kind of what inspired you, and what was your palette for that kind of situation?
So we leaned for Walt, who's Shamik Moore. He's our main protagonist, and he kind of leans in this like warmer color palette. He's a lot more grounded. And then for Susan, we wanted to make it a little more heightened. For Susan's character, looking at professional bowling, they mainly use like zoom lenses. So we shot all of her work on zoom lenses. So it really amplified her stature compared to Walt, where he was only on primes, and it was a lot more subjective, this experience of bowling.
Oh, interesting.
I'm curious, with it being a comedy, an absurd comedy, and then it feels like the color and the the world was more like grounded everything, like you were saying. Did you find your transitions and playing into that storytelling, or like the way that you imagined it getting cut in the end? Because I would assume that you're thinking about that too, like in conjunction with the director, like how are we going to emphasize the comedic beats of this as well? Is that part of it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a huge thing was still focusing on like, how do we make it funny?
Mm.
And a lot of times for it to be funny, it's like seeing it in a wide. It's like setting up the joke and allowing the audience to laugh. So we were pretty deliberate in our shot list of kind of where we were going to transition out of a scene or kind of where the jokes landed. It was also the funniest script I read. So there was never like a point where you had a moment to like, oh, we're done laughing. Now I'm going to relax and then laugh again.
Yes.
This was like layers on layers of jokes. So it's a movie you got to watch multiple times.
And this movie is by two brothers and directed by one brother. Or were they co-directing as well?
So Yasser and Isaiah Lester, they're brothers, and this was their directorial debut.
I imagine that they have their own dynamic that probably bleeds into the set as well, like outside of the script.
They're actually, even though they're comedians and they're really funny, they're both two grounded individuals, and they really knew what they wanted, and they kind of work off each other. We use that 3-person system to our advantage, where I would be working with one brother, we would be shot listing, while the other brother would be working with another department.
Oh, that's smart.
Amazing.
And that was like a game changer.
Yeah.
So the three of us were always kind of in sync, or I'm always talking to one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once we got to set, they were on the same page and they were really kind of feeding off each other. So it became really seamless.
And had you shot a lot of comedy before this?
I shot a little bit of comedy, but this was like nosedive in the deep end.
Yeah.
comedy.
How was the meeting when you originally were meeting with them about it? Did it come as an interview, or did you know them prior? And how were you like, yeah, I can do a feature comedy, done? Like,
Yeah, no, so I got the script from my agent, and I kind of told them I wanted to shoot more sports movies. I've been an athlete all my life. And he was like, hey, you got a script? And then it was like, hey, you got a meeting. So I was like, oh my God, I got to read this immediately. And I kind of built up some ideas, but meeting them on Zoom, they were so personable. And we really connected right away. And I remember it was such a quick turnaround from the meeting to scouting bowling alleys. Like, I think it was like within a week.
was bowling the sport you thought it was going to be? Like, when you said into a sports movie, were you like,
No, I mean, I feel like you look back at like dodgeball or any like
classic,
fun, like niche sports movies. And I think there's something special about them because they haven't been overdone.
Totally.
Yes.
So you can kind of put your imprint on like, hey, I did this one movie that was crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So that also leads me to my next question. You have representation. Before you did, how did you find yourself getting work to build up your resume and like show people you could do this?
I mean, it's funny that you asked that because it's always evolving. So regardless if you have representation or you're looking for representation, you're always building your brand in a way. And that could mean going to networking events, meeting other directors, meeting producers, crewing for friends. And how this industry works, it's a snowball effect. So it's like you make one project, which gets you the job to the next project. And that project gets you the next. And you kind of slowly, that's how you build that portfolio. And then when it comes to representation, you kind of just have to wait as that snowball gets bigger and you're kind of building traction and someone wants to jump on board and kind of help build your brand. Because they're not going to always like get you work. It's more of like, who's going to be on my team as I move forward in my career.
Who's rooting for you? And you also probably, you want someone who, you don't want to chase people. You want someone to come to you because they believe in you and they're like,
they've already been looking at your work and they already know, like, okay, what is your trajectory? Okay, this is how I can help you.
Yeah.
And so forth. So, like, a lot of times you'll see people get representation after, like, they get a movie in a big festival or they just finish a big job. But I think it's more important that you have a decent amount of projects under your belt, especially with our industry, with all the strikes and how it fluctuates a lot. You just want to be able to jump wherever you need to jump.
Would you recommend for the folks who are interested, they're listening to you right now and they're like, that's exactly what I want to do? Would they, like, first job be a PA on set, or would you recommend that they go do a program if they haven't gone to film school?
I recommend getting on set because when you're on set, think about how many people you're meeting.
Right.
You know, it's not just the department you want to work with. It's that script supervisor, that's art department. And I found, like, earlier in my career, like, that's how I got jobs, is because I was in the room.
Yeah.
If you're nice and you're willing to help a friend, you'll continue being in those rooms. And then you can kind of start voicing, like, where you want to go with your career.
And you just mentioned the strike. Like, how are you feeling just personally in terms of, like, how the industry has changed so much, like, in the last, however many years? It's like, how are you feeling things have changed in your career with strikes, with, even like AI? You don't have to talk about AI. I feel like everyone's been talking about AI, but you know what I mean? Like,
I think my career in shooting has been a lot of overcoming of things. Like, I graduated AFI in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that took, like, an extra, like, year plus. And then with the strikes. And I think those are times where you kind of remind yourself, like, do I really want to do this? And I've found by diversifying my work and not just doing narrative or maybe doing documentaries or doing commercials, that's kind of kept me afloat all this time. Or crewing for friends. Like, I still, like, I'll crew for my friends. I'll operate for them because it's another way to meet more producers.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a weird time right now because I feel like a lot of my jobs have been out of state, which is,
it's nothing's in LA anymore. It's really weird and sad. It's like we should bring it back.
It's only been, like, commercial work that's been in LA, and everything else, like, I've been reading for has been out of LA. And that's a whole can of worms of figuring out, like, who's my rental house, who's my crew.
Oh yeah, because you're hiring local and you need probably recommendations and, like, you know people on the ground.
The nice thing is, like, when you are based in New York and in LA, like, you do have a hub.
Yeah.
And a lot of the vendors and a lot of people live here. So it's so easy to get recommendations, or being in LA has helped me when I have to work in different states.
But it must be so scary when it's like you get an offer, you get someone and they're like, oh yeah, but you can only bring your first and second. That's it. Or that's wild and kind of scary territory if everything is doing that moving forward.
Yeah. But the crazy thing, it reminds me of being back at AFI.
Right.
Where it's that, how do I not make an excuse? And I still kind of show up and I still bring myself regardless of who is on my team.
Right.
It sounds like you are very, like, you're a good problem solver just based on what you've been talking about. And I'm curious what you feel like you learned about yourself doing that program, because you said you learned so much and, like, you had to really adapt. Maybe adaptability is the word I'm thinking. Both. We'll give you both of them.
I think learning to take a step back and to be calm in situations, like, even if the room is on fire and you're on fire, how to kind of take a moment to yourself and reflect on the situation.
On the fire.
Yeah.
There's nothing better
just
than
because it trickles down, like, if you're stressed out and you're in a horrible mood, everyone underneath you can feel that. and it really ruins their day. And I think the other big lesson that I learned was you need to be able to work with anyone and everyone, but you don't have to work with people if you don't like them. Because I think when I was coming up in the industry and just, you feel like you have to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And it's like constant yes, yes, yes. But your mental health is sometimes a lot more important than saying yes. So I think you kind of have to reflect every time you go on a job or you're hiring people, like, do I mesh with them? And it's okay if I don't. Like, I can gladly recommend someone, and to be okay to recommend someone else and not put yourself first.
Hey, if you're going to be a therapist, you got to understand your client, right?
And speaking on that, like, do you feel like you've had to deal with any challenges thus far in your career? Like, do you feel like there's any tips you would give to young women who want to do this? Women or men?
I mean, it's funny because I'm thinking of like a very particular story, but
Names.
I was shooting like a ton of narrative, like I was shooting a ton of shorts, like back to back to back, and they were all like grade shorts. And I was like, man, I'm poor. Because I've just been doing all these shorts, but I feel so fulfilled. And I was like, I have to get into commercials. So I started just meeting with other directors and producers.
I've heard for directors as well, you kind of get boxed into like, oh, I do music videos, or I do commercials, or I do branded work. And I don't know if that's similar in for DPs as well, but like, how do you show like, yeah, I do this and I do this well, but I can also do this other thing?
I met this director who was super cool. He put me up for a commercial, and the commercial was a girl standing there. She was not moving. I booked the job, and then they were like, the client doesn't want you. And I was like, that's crazy. Because I'd shot so many people sitting before. And it was because I didn't have that much commercial work on my resume. And that's kind of how the industry works.
It's like the show they had always. It's like, what can you do first?
So I recommend, like, in your field, like, I like to talk to my directors because usually, like you said, you were shooting a feature, or it's like, oh, I'm shooting this, but I want to do that.
Yeah.
But it's like build a relationship with that person. So then when they do have a commercial, like that's your
they call you up.
The one that you were just shooting in Austin, was that through?
So funny enough, like the job I didn't get with the girl standing, so I stayed friends with that director, and then he hired me this year to shoot in Austin.
It's what you said earlier about just like work against work. It's like always the case. I just feel like with anything, it's like the more you meet people, the more you work with people, the more you meet producers, it's like
the world becomes smaller.
If you're a genuine person, if you're like, we've known you for 30 minutes now, but you seem like a really wonderful person. And that's probably why you get a lot of work, because there's also people that we've experienced just through this experience, so many people that are networkers. Like, I'm a networker, and it's like sometimes when people are like hardcore networkers without like the foundation or like the depth to do it, it's just like really hard.
You gotta
to get work.
You gotta know like what you're doing when you're networking, because it's not necessarily like get me a job. It's more know my name. Know my name.
What advice would you give to a young woman or non-binary director who has been, men too, I shouldn't box that out by gender, anyone who's been working in a commercial space, or they've been working in narrative and they want to switch to a different space? Maybe they want to work in documentaries. Like, what would you recommend for sort of shifting genres, so to speak?
I would recommend build really strong relationships with your collaborators, your directors, your producers, and everyone on set. And a lot of times I'll meet directors who are like, oh my God, I really want to shoot commercials. Or they shoot commercials like, oh my God, I really want to do narrative. And I think you can really leverage with what you're doing, especially if you meet a director who's been only doing commercials and they want to do narrative, like, hey, I'll do your short for you.
or I'll do that kind of freebie for you. And how this industry works, it's a lot of freebies and then they magically pay off.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to know they might not pay off. So what else can I get from this? So could it be footage? Could it be a relationship? Could it be money? But the best way to jump from commercials to narrative to documentaries to television is to diversify. Like, try to shoot things that you like seeing in that other field. Like, if you like Nike commercials, try to shoot some narratives that are in that vein, and then it's an easier jump.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an automatic jump, but it's like a slow stepping stone.
When you named the three, like money, relationships, or footage, most of the time I was just thinking like you can't always get all three. Like, and most of the time you have to take, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I feel like early on is always the case. And then you get to a point where you're shooting a movie like Gutter and you're probably getting all three, you know, like you get to a point where
I would say like the best projects, you get all three, but there's always one that's always like kind of behind.
yeah, for sure.
It doesn't matter like how big the production is or how small the production is. There's always that one thing in that triangle that's not really there.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to be okay with it. And I found investing in people and finding people that you can really connect with, that pays off a lot more in the long run. For sure.
What do you